I don't know if you're really socially awkward. You could very well be, but I think there are a few other factors you can consider before you jump to that conclusion. It may very well be that you simply don't share the same common interests or expectations that other people generally do. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because one of the prime examples that comes to mind, especially for my sort of age group, is the subject of alcohol, right? So it is very normal to make plans with someone or a small group of people to go out and get drinks. Maybe you go to a bar. If you're a little younger than me, maybe you go to a club, and that's totally normal. In fact, if you do it multiple times a week, also totally normal. It is so normal that when alcohol starts to have its sort of physical effect where it takes its toll a little bit on you, it's almost undetectable, because you think, well, what I'm doing is socially acceptable, therefore I'm not drinking out of moderation. So it is kind of an insidious thing. And I don't want to necessarily get into the science of it. I mean, I've had my fair share of going out and having drinks and whatnot. But the main reason I try to avoid it at this point in my life is because of the long-term health ramifications it can have. And the reason I bring this up is because I recently went on a trip. So here's the anecdotal experience, the story I want to tell. I went to visit some family of mine, and they're about my same age. It's mostly girl cousins, but between late 20s, early 30s. And I found that I had a really hard time sort of socializing with them. Mind you, I've grown up with these cousins my entire life. Like, I've known them for a long time. But for whatever reason, as I get older, I just have a harder time sort of connecting, I guess you could say. There's a couple factors involved with that. One being the interest, right? The drinking is one thing. And two is the fact that they just have different life experiences because of, if a bunch of girls are hanging out together, there's a lot of sort of commonalities they can share and discuss, especially in regards to boys and what have you. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, when I go to visit my dad's side of the family, it's mostly boy cousins, so there's a lot of things we can talk about: video games, sports, anime, whatever, stuff like that. So I was trying to deduce, is it something with me? Is it just do I have the wrong expectations here? Because I felt very frustrated throughout the trip, right? Like, kind of unreasonably so. To the point where, I might have actually gotten on other people's nerves just with my sort of, kind of stood there quietly, didn't really say that much. It's like, what the hell's wrong with this guy? And the conclusion I've come to so far, just after the last few days of thinking about it, is it's a combination of I need to show up and I need to understand what the score is and just work with it, right? Like, you know who you're going to be hanging out with for however set amount of time, and you need to adapt accordingly. This is me telling myself that in hindsight. But the other part is, don't be afraid to maintain that boundary. If you don't want to go out, stay out till 2, 3, 4 in the morning drinking alcohol, that's totally fine, right? There was a point where they asked me to, and I stood my ground. I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm sorry. And they just want me to go hang out and have a good time, right? Nothing wrong with that. But I knew if I made that decision, I was going to regret it the next day. I'd feel like crap. But initially, sorry, that's what I was going to say at first. Initially, when they asked me, I felt really bad because I was like, well, they're trying to make an effort to connect with me. Here I've been this stick in the mud the whole time. And now that I have a chance to hang out with them, I was declining. So I was questioning that decision for a little bit. Spoiler alert, I eventually was okay with it. I feel like I made the right choice. And to that point, it's because I stood my ground and I set that boundary. But the thing I think I really could have worked on was just not being frustrated, not understanding that the way I saw things and the way that I would like things to pan, because I'm a very I like things to be planned. I like to know what's happening next. I can be spontaneous, right? But what I can't be is sitting around with nothing to do, or just waiting and not knowing what I'm waiting for. That type of thing gets on my nerves. And so, depending on the type of crowd you're with, you need to be able to adjust to that situation. At the very least, if you have no idea what's going on, there's no plan, have a plan for yourself. For the next 30 minutes or hour or 2 hours, however long you guys are just twiddling your thumbs, have something ready to do for yourself, whether that be on your computer, your phone, so that you can just manage those expectations in a way that gives you multiple routes to take. And that's sort of the issue I think a lot of people run into with either family or friends. They get so frustrated because they expect things to go in the way that their friend told them it was going to go. They expect it to be, oh yeah, let's meet up at this time, we're going to go play pool, or we're going to do whatever, go to this concert. And it turns out that the reality of those human beings, their little idiosyncrasies and things like that, come into play. And then you're really disappointed when things aren't panning out exactly as the way it was discussed. But it's your job, because you only have control over yourself, not them. It's your job to have your own mini contingencies in place to compensate for those inevitable things that are going to happen. Because it just is. You know them long enough, you spend enough time with someone, you'll get to know that. And hopefully going forward, as you meet new people, you'll be able to make that judgment call sooner of, is this someone who I can really vibe with all of their flaws and all of their, like I said, idiosyncrasies that maybe get on my nerves, but pale in comparison to all of the great qualities that they have. That's the judgment you have to make. And obviously you can't do that with your family. You got your family for life. You gotta make it work with those people. And that is a difficult challenge that I'm facing right now. And it's one of the few I can really speak from the heart on, because it's fresh. It just happened. And I really saw kind of an ugly part of myself. Not in the sense of being confrontational or fighting or being rude. I definitely did my best. You know the expression, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all? That was me. I was living that to the fullest, as best I could. But, there are some points where you're like fish in a barrel, or as I like to describe it, like cats in a barrel, where the natural inclination is everyone is going to start fighting with each other. But how well can you thrive in those situations where you and your family members might not necessarily get along? It's kind of a game that you can play with yourself, a mental game, where you can be as patient as you possibly can. Because it's very easy to say, oh yeah, I'm a real patient person. I meditate. I do all these things to cultivate being a good human being. But how do you know if you've really practiced those things unless they get put to the test? And I'd say being in those situations with friends, cousins, whoever, is how you put it to the test. Unless you're being stressed out, you don't really know if you got it. So that's all the wisdom I got for this week. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and look forward to chatting you. Man, of course I always got to botch the ending. I look forward to chatting with you in the next one. All right, take care. Peace out.